Hey, everybody, welcome to a special Tuesday in the United States edition, Wednesday in Australia. So, super excited to have my friend, and I'm saying his name right because I'm not saying it with the Australian accent, but Matt Vergotis, because I've asked him and I wanted to practice. I always think it's really nice. You think you know how to say something like Matt, right? But I have
Yep.
messed up even those things. So,
Perfect pronunciation. You nailed it.
but I didn't do the accent. I'm not
Well,
going
you
to try to
can. You
do
can
the
have a,
accent.
you can if you want.
No, I think I'll just stick to mine.
Yeah.
I would have needed to practice longer. But I'm really excited. I've been a huge fan for a long time of your work. And when I talked to you, I don't know,
Thank you.
months ago, you're just so easy to talk to. You have a great personality, and your work ethic, as well as just kind of your life philosophy. I think life work philosophy. I think you're a great dad. Every time I see things on Facebook, you just look like you're, you know, just
Thank you, Diane. That's
such a
super nice of you to say that. And likewise, if I can repay the favor, I've checked into a heap of your episodes in the past. And yeah, I always really enjoy your interviewing style. Like it's always a pleasure listening to you interview people. So there you go, straight back at you.
well, thanks. And my mom's here too, so she's in Georgia also, North
I'm
Georgia. Anyway, so we're going to jump in. One of the things when in the beginning, I didn't even put this in here, but I have tons of questions for Matt. But one of the things that he had told me, and I'm like, I'm totally stealing this in a good way. Hopefully you'll think this is, but you
Yep.
said, oh, when you're doing work for your friends, like we call it in the United States, the friends and family discount, right? Which is not
Yep.
very fun. But
No,
do you know what you call yours? Because I do. It's the mates rate,
mates
which I
rates.
think is
That's it.
awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm totally stealing that. And
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. I've kind of taken it one step further with mates rates. I I sometimes get paid in surfboards, which might be a lot cheaper than actually the service that I provide. But for me, the idea of a surfboard
hmm,
is just so much more than the reduced rate sort of thing. Like, it's a physical object and all of that. And like as a surfer, you just love a surfboard. So
yeah,
rather than a grossly reduced sort of rate, a surfboard just seems to fit in
I
much
like
better.
that. I like that idea. I think
Yeah.
that's terrific. Okay. So you are an incredible designer and a letterer. So you really kind of go with both. You do a ton of branding work. You live So I already got the little geography lesson right before everybody
Yep.
came on, and it was that the Gold Coast is kind of like San Diego, south of maybe Los Angeles, which would be the capital, and Queensland is like the state, or is the state, right?
Like California. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So he is in the Gold Coast. I always thought like the Gold Coast, like the West Coast. Like I thought it was like a whole non defined, but it really is. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Yep.
city, so it's more defined.
Yeah. Well,
Just
it started off like a tourist town, way back in the day, and it's just become busier and busier, and it's grown into, I think, the fifth largest city, behind, I guess, Sydney, Melbourne,
wow.
Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide. Okay, so what am I up to? I'm up to five. Um, I'm forgetting something. I don't know if Canberra is before Gold Coast. I guess it would be. Canberra is the capital of Australia, of course. But yeah, in terms of population and size, I think it's just behind Canberra or before. I'm not sure.
That's cool though. So
Yeah.
you're in this beautiful place. You get to surf. You grew up here. And somehow you have managed, I mean, not somehow, you do incredible work. So it's not really a somehow, but
Thank you.
you have clients, and you've worked with clients for many years that are
Yep.
outside of Australia. And so I was like, oh, one in our earlier when we talked in the summer, I think, or some other time, I can't remember when we first talked. Um, you also had a lot of clients that were not even English speaking, which I was like, wow, know. How do you do
Yeah,
that?
that's
Yeah.
right. It's
So
crazy.
go ahead. How do
Okay,
you
yeah.
do?
So, so that all started simply because I started publishing my work online during a quiet period, very quiet period. It was right after the GFC, and all of a sudden my work dried up. If I can backtrack just a little bit from there, it was when I just went out on my own, freelancing, and that coincided with the GFC. And all of a sudden, my client, the existing clients that I had, their work dried up, and I was pretty much invisible. And I just thought, well, how am I going to start getting recognized? And so I started publishing my work online, sites like Behance, back in the early days on Logo Pond, and then Dribble came along, and then I was heavily involved in that. And all of a sudden, one day I got this this an email from Istanbul, Turkey, and from there, people just started noticing my work in various countries, and some of them poor English and stuff like that, but I'd have Skypes, these, interesting Skypes. I'd be Skyping different parts of the world in the morning. And I guess just from making these presentations and being active on social media, it just sort of kept spreading.
So which, because I think it's different, Dribble, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. So, or Behance. So which ones were you posting on? Because you were just posting, and you were posting, well, we'll get into that in a second. But which ones were you posting on?
So right in the early days, it was Logo Pond, because, I was trying to specialize in corporate identity and logo design. And so I would post all my logos there. And there was a really good community around that time. And I was also posting on Behance. I got in early. I hardly ever post to Behance now. And I just, I will get back into that. But I just started posting on those two websites, and it just went from there.
So when you were posting, photography, was that important? Was it important to have a really good kind of project brief? Were these made up things? Were these real clients? What kind of things were you doing?
They were real clients. They were always real clients. But what I would do is I would over present. Let's say a client had X budget, I'd go over that just so it looked good for sites like Behance. And just putting in a lot of energy in showing the process, because that's what designers love seeing. They love seeing process and all of that, the thought and rationale behind each project. Gives you that insight that, I guess adds value to what you do. And so I just, I went to great lengths and trying to, really put that out there. There was a few people doing it at the time, but not as many as what there are now. So I think that's what helped me then, get those followers in the early days.
Yeah.
I think we're going back quite a while now when I first started doing that, like probably 8 or 9 years ago.
So then how often were you posting, or, how long would you turn? Would it be normal kind of like you would do all the process, get the client to okay it, or would you post before the client had okay when it was lots of comps?
No, usually after the client had okayed the project. Oh, look, in the early days, there may have been a few. There was a lot of unused concepts as well. Like back in the day, I used to present more than just one concept, and so I'd probably have 2 or 3 concepts there to sort of throw out there as well. In fact, it's probably good to jump on Logo Pond and see some of the old stuff, because I haven't been on there in a long time, and I know if I was to go through there now, it would get a massive cull. But it actually shows you sort of how far things have come along in, say, 9 years in terms of the styles that I was doing back then.
Well, and I also think it's important because it gives people hope. Like, hey, he gets better and he keeps refining. I think I know Bob. So I feel like Bob did that with Instagram. He kind of started off kind of rough, and he never deleted it. And I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that will be one of our links in the show notes. Will be your Logo Pond.
Definitely. Instagram. That's completely true too. I haven't deleted anything from my Instagram. I haven't really curated in a fashion to just show my best work. If you go way back to the start, I think I was posting pictures of my dog and my barbecuing. like everyone in the early days with Instagram. And then slowly but surely, like little bits of like calligraphy and lettering started to creep in there. And I should go and check it out myself, because it's quite a hoot seeing, just how far.
Well, and I do. It is. It's really. Do you keep your old? So that's another question, and I know it wasn't one of our questions that I had, but do you keep all your old sketchbooks, or it looks like you're doing it on just regular pieces of paper sometimes? Do you just toss them or put them in the client file? And
it's a great question, Diane. And I keep everything, and I use really expensive paper too.
What kind of paper are you using? Does it really make a difference? Like, I mean, I know with like when you're doing the watercolor stuff or ink, I would think it would make a difference, right?
Well, I use Canson bleed-proof paper. I guess you could use any brand, but it's bleed-proof paper. And what it does is it preserves the tips of the pens. So if you're using something like Tombows, they will last longer. You'll get that smoothness. They won't roughen up. And it's the same with quite a few brands, actually. But I use every square inch of that paper, and what I will do as well is, once I've filled up a sheet, I've just discovered the backside of the paper is really good for certain pens. It gives a nice sort of waxy texture, and so I use that for some of the title work that I do. But then once I've done that, I might grab a colourful pen and go over the top of all the other stuff. So even if I've done a beautiful refined logo, I'll end up drawing over, just doing some freestyle stuff with some of the color. So I keep every single sheet. And recently I was thinking I should do this ceremonious sort of bonfire to just get rid of it all, because it's piling up. I've got years and years of paper. And I had a client call me the other day asking, have I got process shots of a job I worked on 2 years ago? Because someone is disputing that it might, look too close to something else that's out there, which it doesn't. I was freaking out when I first heard it, and then they showed the example of, and it's not, but it's just, anyway. So I had to dig through all this, paper, and I thought this is going to take me days to go through, but I managed to sort of visualize, okay, 2 years ago should be about,
No way. So you just keep them in a pile?
It's in this big drawer at work in the office where I work. And
that's awesome. So you just thought about how many things you had done in 2 years, went back, and now you have it. Well, that's it. Good to some extent, right?
It is. So don't throw out your old stuff. You never know when you're going to need it.
Well, especially if somebody starts saying, hey, we created this, and legally you having that process stuff. There was one process piece, and I don't know if I can pull it up. I think it was for Blue Water. Let's see if I can pull. Let's see. Oh, boogers. Now, of course, I'm just clicking through and I can't find it. But it was where I'm going to switch to this really quick. And I'm not. I'm going to try to find it and then I'll get back to it. So it was part where you're covering over it, and it looked like thin enough paper. It was after you've done kind of the pencil underneath, you have like a tracing paper where you're doing your ink. Is that special paper, or do you keep those even?
What, the tracing paper?
Yeah.
Stuff? Yeah, I keep everything. Anything that I write on, I keep. I just whack it in that drawer. It's amazing how much paper you can fit in a drawer.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
But it is messy. Like, it's not all, nice. Well, it's just, you've got A4 bits, you've got A3 bits, you've got torn off bits. But so I don't use tracing paper a lot. Every now and then I'll use it. The Canson, the bleed proof paper is quite transparent when you lay it over something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's right. So that was to try and get a perfect refined version of that logo. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I call that overindulging when I do that. Mm-hmm. If I've got the time and I want to, sometimes I can just go straight to the vector stage from the sheet of paper where you've got the blue version beneath. But for this client, I really wanted to indulge in the process, and so I did quite a few variations of that. In the same sort of style and composition. I use different mediums. Like I think there's one shot of me using actually blue water.
Yeah, absolutely.
the client's name is Blue Water, I decided to drop some blue ink in some water and do that because I thought they'd get off on that process.
Yeah, I love that. And then you're also, this was, I think you can see this now, right?
Yeah.
So this is just one of the process shots. And I think there's another one that has a ton of the process shots in it, but I don't know where I saved that one too. Nope.
Oh yeah. It has a heap of the different sort
Yeah,
of
it was a
concepts.
whole ton of them. I'm going to have to keep looking. So
Yeah.
I'll keep looking and flip back. But it's not like you're just doing it once and just turning. You really do. And I love that you show kind of, hey, it took me. You think this is a lot. There's a ton of sheets you're not even seeing, right?
So I'll go in strong with one concept to present to a client. And often I don't even show the other examples. I mean, I think over the years I've been able to identify what's the right fit. Especially if you're briefed well, I get it in my head. Okay, this is what's going to answer the brief. There's no point showing other concepts. This is the perfect one. And then I'll go to town. And the time that I save not bothering about executing the weaker concepts, I put into presenting that concept in the best light. So I'll go to town in the presentation and just do that. But sometimes my process does change all the time. Sometimes the idea comes to me straight away. I can visualize exactly what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And then I don't even bother with, entertaining other concepts. So I'll just work on one concept and just, pin my ears back on that. And so you won't see, pages and pages of ideas. So it really depends. If I get that light bulb moment or I really know the style that's going to work for that client, then sometimes I'll just do it in one go.
So when you're, let me get back to, back to acquiring these clients. Cause I think this is like, it's magic and we all would like this, but I think there are some challenges, especially when you're working with somebody who doesn't speak English, or doesn't maybe speak English as their first language. So I'm sure there's some communication errors or not errors. Well, I'm sure maybe some errors, but you had told me
communication breakdowns for sure.
Exactly. So I had asked you when we talked in the summer, whenever we talked, you said, I asked, what percentage of clients do you have outside of Australia? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea?
So, it's probably around 80% clients are from overseas and 20% are around Australia. And then I guess of that 20%, probably 5% or 10%, I guess, is local. But yeah, look, there have been times when it's been like 90% overseas. I'm working on a few local jobs at the moment, so that's shifted it to 20%. But yeah, that's roughly about what it is. And of that 80%, a lot come from America. So obviously, the channels in which I'm posting, obviously, Dribble and Behance, I think founded in America and stuff. So maybe there's more exposure.
Right.
In America. So yeah, that's roughly the breakdown.
All right. So then these people you are just posting, people are finding you, loving what you're doing, and then contacting you because you have that either through Dribble or where if you use Logo Pond or Behance, you have your email and people are reaching out to you, correct?
That's correct. It's these days it's only really Dribble and I guess Instagram, but a lot through my website. So it's hard for me I haven't actually worked out what channels they're coming through to get to my website. But if I was to use percentages, I'd probably say 70% through my website and then a split of Dribble and Behance.
Do you have that hire me thing turned on Dribble?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just wondered. I would think managing all that, and this was a question, like, how early are you getting up and how do you manage time difference? Because right now it's Wednesday for you and for us it's still Tuesday. So
I'm in the future.
You are in my future for sure. Yeah. So how do you manage that? Because deadlines can be crazy, I would think.
I actually really like it because generally speaking, emails might come to me through the night and, all through the day. There's quite a bit of an overlap on the west coast of America, and then Europe gets quite a lot of overlap in the afternoon. So I still get a lot of emails and Asia throughout the day as well. But it's usually fine because people will send their emails and they'll go to bed, and then I'm working, maybe perhaps on that project. So when they wake up, they get to see it.
Right.
So
it works out. So
I get to manage my time. I'm up super early in the morning. Like I think this morning I was up at 4:30 because I was going surfing, and for one reason or not, I didn't end up going surfing. But you know, I'm just a morning guy, so I'll get up super early, and more often than not, I'll go for my surf, and then I'll be checking emails perhaps before I get to the surf, or while I'm checking the surf and whatnot. If there's something urgent, I'll sort of I'll action it. But yeah, clients are really cool like that, and because they're projects that take time,
right.
It's not like I've got like immediate deadlines.
Right.
Although I've got a few tight deadlines at the moment that are just like, wow.
You would like it to be Tuesday again?
I think because we're getting to the end of the year, like there's this urgency to get things done. And so I've had a couple of clients drop these crazy deadlines where they need an identity within a few days. I'm like, okay. And because I'm self-employed, I always say yes. But I think then I question whether I can actually physically get it done later.
Right.
I always do, but
but you get it done. I get it done. So managing that seems to not be a problem. You kind of you feed off of that kind of energy, I think, right? Yeah. Let's see. So what are does anybody like me? So I think you're 15 hours ahead of me. So it's 5:30 where I am when we started, and it was 8:30 in the morning where you are. So that really works.
It was crazy time in my house right before we chatted. It was school getting out the door with the kids and stuff like that. So I went from that to straight into this.
So do you have other clients that want to see you?
So with every inquiry, I instigate a Skype chat. It's paramount for me to have FaceTime with every single client that reaches out to me. One, I like to just sort of communicate, meet these people. I like them to see and chat to me just to see, to make it real. And, to make sure it's not a bogus inquiry as well. Because, if a client's not willing to have a Skype chat and do the FaceTime, then how they, they're not, it's not real. I can't expect them to sort of go to the next stage.
Are you really good at time zones, or do you have to Google it? That's a crazy question, maybe.
I can usually guess it sort of within a couple of hours,
That's good.
I know it's getting late on the East Coast of America, but it's in the afternoon sort of on the West Coast.
Right.
And then I just sort of, visualize. I'm pretty good at geography. So I do this sort of visualization thing.
Like the 2 years down in the stack. So you're good with time and space, I think.
I think, yeah.
Clearly, if you can do that, I think that's a superpower you didn't know you had.
Yeah, cool.
So working for yourself can be just be a series of chaotic and crazy deadlines, right? And I think you have the curse of an entrepreneur where you have things that you want to do, and then you also have things that you say yes to. And I'm very similar. I don't say no probably enough because it's always, you don't ever know when that really lean time is coming. And I think that's
exactly right.
So me and you have talked about this before, that it doesn't matter how successful you are, there will be lean times. And I think it's really important to tell everybody that everybody has this. It's not like you're just like, another one's coming, I mean, you have to keep marketing. You have to keep doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you juggle between these lean times and these crazy busy times? Because this is a issue for a lot of people, and it causes a lot of stress.
I wouldn't say I'm the best at it. So basically, generally speaking, coming into Christmas and coming out of Christmas are the quiet times. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden jobs start dropping, and around sort of whether it's February or March, sometimes it can be earlier, sometimes it can be later. And then for me, I don't know when they're going to drop or anything like that, but they do drop, and they just seem to be consistent until you get to that end of the year part again. I have had busy years where it's gone all the way through, just where there's just a slight dip through the Christmas period. And then I've had years where I've had the busiest middle part of the year, which has been the best year that I've ever had, bookended by the two quietest. So I think those quiet periods, you've got to keep yourself busy. Perhaps that's when, so I've been really slack at posting on social media and keeping, because during the busy periods, I don't have the time, as much time and energy to sort of compose these lovely posts through Instagram and whatnot. But then I seem to post a lot more during those quiet periods, and perhaps that has a follow-on effect. I don't know if it's a chasing tail sort of situation, that when you're busy, because you're not posting, that presents the quiet period in the future, and then you start posting, then you get busy again. But I think personal projects, there's been quite a few personal projects that I've worked on during those quiet periods, and they kind of change every year. I sort of set myself new personal projects every year that I want to indulge in, and I do that through some of the quiet periods. And from that you get material as well to then post, etc. Like I've built fonts. I wanted to get into murals one year. Illustration was the thing that I started, even though that really wasn't something that I could see as helping that much for what I do with the corporate identity and the lettering and stuff. Well, I guess it can go hand in hand with murals and stuff like that. But at the start of the year, I just all of a sudden I wanted to draw waves, and I wanted to touch base with illustrating, not just letter forms, but things. And I thought, I'll start drawing waves, and I really enjoyed that, and that was fantastic. So I did a fair bit of that at the start of the year. So I think just following, doing those passion projects when you're, quiet, and providing you've got enough money saved in the kitty to get you through those quiet periods, and then start pulling your hair out when that starts to get a bit lean, and then you've got to get a bit more proactive with actually what your core business is, and start putting yourself out there again.
So let's talk about one of those lean time projects, which is Dissimo, and I'm going to pull this up. And so I'm just, one of the things, okay, I huge fan, love your work. So then one of the things that I love is you really have a lot of styles. Like you're not just pigeonholed into one thing. And the other thing I love is that you really write well, and so I think, if you get a lot of stuff from, or a lot of business coming in, which would really, really be a simple, like Google, putting that little tracker code thing in. But you have a ton of writing, and you're writing about this, in which, Google requires 300 words for it to show up in search engines. And I think you really use this to your advantage.
Thank you. That's really kind of you to say that. And I'm writing doesn't come naturally to me. I have to work on it. When I'm just blurting out words, it's a mess. It really is a mess. So when I'm writing something for a page like this, I have to sort of blurt it all down, and then just sort of refine it and make sure I'm not tying my sentence ups in knots. I have a tendency to tie my sentences in knots. But so thank you. I'm stoked to hear that.
But I think that it's something that a lot of times people are like, oh, well, just imagery will do it. But I think this helps someone to be able to translate it into their language, and then they can read it as best possible. But I think from hand lettering to making a typeface like Dissimo, which I use, I love, I bought it, and it's very affordable, people. So you guys should check it out. But
I think you're the second person that bought it. High fives.
Woo! But it's great. Like I used it if anybody was here during my Beaver talk, I used Dissimo. So that was my main typeface, and it's a very flexible face. So this was a lean time project that you had done. And I love how the name comes, right? You said it was born from the imagination of your daughter, and it means kind person. I think that's
She used to call me Dissimo. She hasn't in ages. No, we've got so many pet names in our house that we call them. We go through phases with all of them. But Dissimo. And I said, what does Dissimo mean? And she said it means kind person. And I just thought, that's beautiful.
It is.
Attach it to it. So,
And it's also like a mountain range or something in Italy, right? Or
That's right. Yes, it is. I
right.
Googled Dissimo, and it is. It's a beautiful little village somewhere in Italy. So yeah, there you go. It has a duality.
So, but was this something that you had done before? So were you learning glyphs, or were you learning, this is kind of a big project to make a
It's a
typeface.
huge project. Okay, so it all started. I'll try and give you a condensed version of it, because it's a big project, has got a lot of explaining. But because I design logo types, pretty much all the logos that I design the logo types for, I like to design the typeface.
Mm-hmm.
That makes up. And I designed this one logo ages ago for a client that was called Unique, spelled UNIIK. And I liked the letter forms. I thought, okay, it's kind of like a funky looking serif thing here. And I decided to create the rest of the letters blindfolded, not literally, but without referencing any other, without reference. You imagine that, just blindfolded.
Right. You are way more talented than I gave you credit for.
Yeah, that's that visualization thing coming in again. But yeah, so I just didn't want to reference any other fonts. So I started creating all the letters without looking at anything else. And I just wanted to see what a lifetime of looking at letters had left an imprint. So I created my first font, which was called Newbie. And it's for free on my website. And it's had stacks of downloads. But straight after that, I was on this high of creating a font, and I went straight into Dissimo, which again was another logo type, but different letters. And I mean, Dissimo is a reflection of, I guess, my knowledge of creating typefaces probably about 5 years ago, maybe even longer. But it took me 3 years to create. On and off. I went through periods where for 6 months I didn't even, work on it. So it's, when I say 3 years, it didn't take 3 years.
Right. Well, blindfolded, it might have taken you 3 years, right?
Well, once I'd created Newbie, that was the one that I wanted to do sort of without referencing anything. And of course, once I'd finished it, once I had created all the glyphs, I then referenced, popular fonts like Helvetica and Times to work out why certain letters weren't looking like, for example, the C. I thought the C would have been the easiest letter to design. It's just an O with a bit cut off. But it's not. The top, it looks so funky. And I'm thinking, why doesn't it look right? And it's because you've got to push out the top terminal, push in a little bit and push out here and there just on those terminals to get that, that optical balance. And so, and at the start, I think I had my cap letters higher than my ascenders, which is wrong. And then I was like, oh, okay, then cap heights are lower. Right. Okay. That makes sense. So that's when I went through and refined it. That's Newbie. That's right.
So Dissimo is used as a lot of kind of the small text that goes with a bigger script or hand lettered kind of thing.
So I wanted to create a slab serif. Yeah, that's right. That accompanied, well, originally it was just a standalone logo type. In fact, it was called Musology back then. And if you go through the Dissimo presentation, I think there's an example of it. And that was a clothing label brand. Mm. And I created just a slab serif font for that. And then I thought, okay, well, this is another logo type that I could expand. But this time, instead of just doing one weight, which was Newbie, Newbie wasn't flexible enough because there's no italic or bold or anything like that. You kind of need, because it wasn't a display font, you need that that family to make it marketable. I thought I'll create 4 weights and their respective italic partners. And oh my gosh, geez, I wish I had have just stuck to maybe 2 of it.
But that's why it's so great, because it is flexible, and you show it in body text. You show, which you really sell it really well. So I think your preview images are also really strong. Yeah. But here's the in the context. So here's Musology. It's the brewery part of Black Hops.
Yeah.
Military one source, and the raising aloha in the aloha knots. Oh, I don't know.
That's really hard to read. I should have put some breaks in that, but because it's a made up word, it is really, it's like the word minimum. You sort of get lost in the ups and downs.
You do, yeah.
Yeah. But look, do you know what? There's also this, like with Black Hops and Aloha Knots, when it's all you, like with Black Hops brands, they use that for their marketing and advertising and all of that. Yeah, it's 100% you, and it kind of feels good when you do that, especially when you're really proud of how a brand's looking. Yeah, I kind of get a kick out of that. I need to create more. There's that time thing though. I need a quiet period to start my next project.
But so you have some passive income abilities, right? On your website, you have a print that you have for sale, and then you have these 2 fonts, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
that's correct.
Somebody had a question. Jeremy had a question way earlier. When you're sketching, are you a tiny sketcher? I thought at first you said drawer, but you meant a drawer. Or do you tend to doodle on a larger scale? Because I think with like the brush, the water brush, you kind of have to go bigger because of the actual bristles.
It depends on what medium I'm using. Like I've got a few go-to pens, a few favorite pens where look, probably 80% of the posts you see online, I've used those pens, and it's quite small scale. But then when I'm using a Tombow, or I want to do a fast flicky style, I'll go big. Like I love going big. And so you really chew through the bleed proof paper, the expensive paper when you're doing that. But yeah, no, I go both. So it depends on the process and the pen that I'm using for it.
And so it's also good to share with everybody that you are a lefty, right? Because it poses a whole nother sense of challenges, I think. But clearly you have overcome any challenges that a left-handed person would.
I don't know any different. It's what I've always done.
But you have to kind of hold your hand differently so that it's not smearing. Because if you're with a regular pen, because you're not just doing pens. I mean, you'll use ink, you'll use watercolors. So you're not just controlling the tools. You're actually controlling your arm and your body in a way when you're creating these things, so that you don't get these smears.
Yeah, that's right. But even back at school and learning how to write, I always had that over the top approach. So it's not like I've had to learn how to adjust to go like that. It's just naturally been that way for me. You've got a lot of left-handers that come from underneath. They're the ones that have the troubles, because they're the side of their hands drifting through the ink. So they're the ones that typically have the smudging problem, and the ones that typically you see will angle their paper and have to, adjust. So, because I've taught quite a few workshops, and there's usually 1 or 2 people that are lefties, and it's always much trickier teaching them to, the approach. Because not only that, when you're over the top, okay, if you're using a chisel tip, it's at the exact same angle as a righty that's from underneath, if that makes sense like that. So if they're an underneath, you can imagine the chisel tips are like that. So it gives them different junctions and, terminal shapes and stuff like that. But when it's like that, when you're over the top, it's the same. So you've got this same sort of.
So you can mimic that same natural look, I guess, that a right-handed, not that right-handed people are better. It's just more of a challenge to do it left-handed, I think. Because there's not guides. There's tons of guides. I mean, you had to write like that for your whole life. It's normal to you, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So the only real difference is where I'm pulling, a righty is pushing, etc., and stuff like that. And that does give a few different results. Sometimes if I get a certain result that I think, and that helps me for some letters. And I've had righties say, I wish I was a lefty so I could get that result with my R's or M's or something like, but yeah.
So Carol Ann, she's one of my students, but she lives on the West Coast. She said, can you redesign the rest of the U.S. military, please? Haha. The thing you had with the wings coming in, I love that. It is beautiful.
I must point out that's an unused concept. So that didn't go forward. So that was done for an agency over in the States that was pitching something, and so anyway, that's
so unused. It's beautiful.
I do that. Yeah, bring it on.
So then Colin, and I don't know if Colin's right.
Is it Colin? I don't know.
Yeah, Colin. Okay. Yeah. So he said, no, we're better.
He's a good friend of mine. G'day, Colin. Stoked to hear that you're watching.
So, all right. So, we'll get back now. We're on number 3, and we have 15 minutes left. So, what are you've
Oh,
told us
really?
some of the side projects. So, what
Yep.
kind of when illustration was on that list, what were you doing
Yep.
illustratively?
I was
To
drawing waves at that time.
Okay,
I was kind of thinking, what can I draw? And obviously, I'm passionate about the ocean and stuff like that. So I started drawing waves, and I was following a couple of guys that illustrated waves, and I just, yeah, it was what I was getting a kick out of, and so I just tried to do it my way. And I'd been drawing waves since I was a little, since I started surfing. I mean, that's all my folders at school were just filled with waves. So I thought, okay, that's how I used to draw it back then. Let's you know let's turbocharge it a little. So I got into it, and yeah, I'm going to get back into it too. I've been saving pictures of waves on Instagram because I follow a whole heap of, surfing accounts and stuff like that. And I can't wait to get back into that. And I want to go large scale with it too.
right. So I want to show. I don't know if these are the ones you're talking about, but these are wicked cool and absolutely beautiful. So I want to just give people. Are these the waves you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, there's a few nice color ones there, but they're that's them. They were the last couple that I drew.
So I can't find them quick enough. So, all right. So
Oh,
I
if you
wanted,
scroll down, oh, sorry, that's
scroll
right.
down. Oh, no, I can scroll down. Hang on. Let me share my screen again. It's all these clicks,
Yeah, so if you scroll down a little bit further,
Oh,
you'll
these
start.
ones. Oh, yeah.
There you go. So if you go just a little bit further, there's one that I'm quite happy with, which is my favorite. It's that one on the right there, the far
This
right.
one?
Yeah, that one
This,
there.
the
The
one with
one above.
color?
Yeah, top right. Yeah, that's it.
They're beautiful. Like the detail is amazing.
Yeah, there's something about, I love sort of indulging in those things that kind of take a long time to do. Um, and, drawing all those little lines, you've really got to focus. And I guess it's meditative,
Hmm.
drawing like that. So, you have to have that concentration to get through it. And, when the results come together, it's, yeah.
So will you draw this in pencil, even all the little lines, and then go back in pen? Or will you just kind of get the main big ones and then go back?
Yeah. Okay, so pencil for everything. All those little lines, I might just do a few
Hmm.
to map it out, and then yeah, because you can do a wrong. If you do one line wrong, it sort of throws out the flow,
Hmm.
and it has a follow-on effect, and you've got to try and correct it back into place. And yeah, so and more often than not one of them are touching as well, which is also challenging.
Yeah. And a
Yeah,
lot of like skill and just hand skills of being really steady, right?
yeah, yeah.
You don't drink a lot of caffeine, I guess.
I love my caffeine.
All right. So
I don't know if you can see, but I've got a coffee right here.
one of the things that I love, and I'm just going to go ahead and flip to it, is when we talked before, the Black Hops project, I think is great. So one, it's that you're always also thinking about a client. So you're not just
Yep.
like, oh, let's blow it out of the water, do as much money, spend as much. They really came to you with a budget. And this is also a really fun challenge, I think, for a lot of
Yeah.
times people, or for me as a designer, and
Yeah.
to make, there was a particular budgetary challenge on this one. Can you tell them about it?
Yeah, sure. So Black Ops came to me, and I was super stoked because it was the first time a brewery, a craft brewer, came to me with a job, and that's kind of like a passion project for me. Like, there's something about alcohol branding that a lot of work goes, into, the overall aesthetic. It's a great uh, canvas to really sort of do some creative work. And so when they came to me, they had a budget, but look, if there's one bit of advice that I can give anyone, especially starting out, that wants to get into it, is what you put forward is going to end up on your website.
Mm.
So yeah, sure, sometimes you have to consider a budget, right? Because you've got to consider other projects and all that. But if you can over deliver, it's going to, I've received so many inquiries now from brewers that are interested in my work because of this. And so I went to town on this project, and I just had a lot of fun creating it. It was it was one of those jobs. It very nearly didn't go this way. But then luckily in the end it did, because I had to come up with another concept that wasn't as scripty. But then the boys fell in love with that. I got them over the line with my presentation, and so that's been their logo. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Like sorry, my point was, it was one of those projects where you've got a vision of how you want it to look, and sometimes these things can get watered down through the process. But this turned out exactly how I wanted it to. So I can't tell you, like, when I'm holding one of those cans in my hand, oh man, it makes it taste 10% better easily. And it's a really good beer too.
So one of the things with this project was, they said, as you look at the bottles, so the bottles really there, it looks like a 3-color label, right? It's like there's that gray or silver that's in the logo, black, and then the color that's on the band. But these are not printing on the bottle, right? So the challenge with the cans was that you had these, they couldn't print that many colors on that many cans because it is a brewery. And so you're thinking about, there are other challenges when you're talking about a smaller client.
Exactly. So, okay, they've got a core range of about 12 beers. And obviously some are more marketable than others. Like some of them, appeal to, beer drinkers more than others. Like, you've got your diehards that like certain specific, like stouts or IPAs and stuff like that. But the numbers that they're going to push more of are, beers like the pale ale and stuff like that. But they obviously want to be able to can all of their beers in different sort of quantities. And when you're printing on cans, you've got to do it in bulk, like huge numbers. So rather than have a whole heap of cans for, say, an IPA or stout that doesn't sell nearly as much as, say, what the pale ale, we came up with this idea to print a generic can and then put a sticker over the can, which that represents each core range beer. And so obviously that was a challenge in working out how to do that. But it's turned out really well.
But I love that. I love that, because then it again makes it so it's you've solved a design challenge as well as a budgetary challenge for them in being able to produce, because there are some flavors, I don't know another way to call it, that are going to be more popular. So how would they know how many labels to print?
Exactly. So yeah, it's really worked out well for them, and yeah, I love them as a client. It's great. They're a bunch of great guys, and I go down to their tasting room just there. That's me designing, painting the sign.
So this is one of the murals that you had. This was
room. Yeah, that's their tap room, and that was the very first time I went large scale, and it was. I projected it on a wall, and it was pretty easy to do in that sense because all the hard work was done when I came up with the logo. But and I used Posca pens. That was pretty easy. So they've moved away from bottles now, and it's just cans. And so that was a fun project. And I love corporate identity work because, a logo will fall flat on its face if it's not presented well. And a lot of people know this. But you've got to design, obviously the corporate color palettes, the typefaces that you use, the graphical structures, the typography decisions that you make, and things like patterns and icons and all of that. All that sort of stuff has to come together. So whenever I get a client, I'm always pushing to go for those presentations that look at that from the start, because if you just design a logo on its own, a client pegs too much on the logo. They're trying to visualize this brand, but they're only seeing the logo. And so they can't visualize it as well. So, I create some very simple logo types sometimes, but they come to life when you see it in context with everything else that supports the logo.
Well, and these logos are responsive. So some of them, this is how it's used in one way. This is how it's used stacked. This is how it's used straight across. And correct, I think if you aren't doing this responsive, it does make this much more a living, breathing thing that's going to be flexible for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't work for every client, but for a lot of clients, I present logo suites. And that will be just different lockups, extracting maybe a monogram out of a mark or something, so it works on small scale and stuff like that. And if you've got this logo suite, it gives you all those assets moving forward, because, you know, again, if a client just wants a logo and then all of a sudden they're like, you know, they're doing their little Facebook icon and they're like, oh, this doesn't work. And of course it doesn't, because there's, you know, you got a lot of letters in your name and whatnot, and you got to get it down. So you need to be able to think about those things.
Absolutely.
You know, from the start. So, you know, it's a big picture service, you know, that I'm trying to get from clients, obviously.
Absolutely. So you're getting lots of comments. Victoria, I'm glad you're here too. Jeremy said Charlotte, North Carolina is booming with craft breweries, and people are looking to start them. Lots of business to be had here. And Regime said, who was your inspiration on your style? So where do you go for inspiration?
All right. So, I mean, I guess being active on social media, you follow people and you just surround yourself with, you know, talented designers. If I go right back to the beginning, the one designer that really made me think, oh, geez, I'd love to be able to do that. I love the way he approaches his letter forms. It was Sergei Shapiro. I was just so fascinated with the energy that he could infuse into his letter forms. Mm-hmm. And I used to just eyeball his work and just go, look, one day because I'd always in the past, I'd drawn some, you know, hand lettered logos and stuff like that. But it was right around that social media boom, and I was just seeing how other people were approaching things. And I think it was his work that made me want to sort of take it to the next level and see what I could bring to the table.
So Carol Ann asked a question, and I think this is a really good question, and something I need to probably work on as well. So I think you could teach people how to sell, how to kind of make that pitch and get them on board, because now you're really only doing one concept and you're showing them part of the process. And I think bringing them into the process early on, or at least in the pitch, allows them to feel like they're part of these decisions. And I don't know where do you show people part of these?
No, see, that's another thing. I don't like client involvement through the process at the start. Sometimes, like, you know, every job's different. Sometimes I do engage the client. I might give them a reverse brief, or I might say, hey, look, you know, this is where I'm thinking of going. If I think that they need to see these things first, or if it's going to be a very time-consuming sort of indulgement on my behalf going down a certain style, I want to make sure, just test the waters. Having said that, though, more often than not, the first time a client will see the concept is after I've put in a lot of work. Now, the reason why I do that, when you show a client concepts, especially sketches or something, you know, like that, my sketches might not look just picture perfect at the start. They start thinking, oh, what else you got? Because they can't see how that's visually going to look down the track once you apply all those extra assets and colors and, you know, the structure in which you lay things out and all of that. You know, you build the presentations up so they look at it at the start and they go, okay, where's this going? It's okay. Sometimes I've had clients go, I didn't think much about the logo at the start, but then once I got to the end of the presentation, I absolutely loved it. Right? So if you introduce the client at the start, when you do only have like a logo or a sketch, you are just asking for trouble, because you can then get into this sort of client design battle where they're not trusting your instincts.
Right.
They have to see the final result. And more often than not, you get it over the line with these presentations. There are going to be times when you don't. Right. But the time that you save for not doing all these other, you know, concepts, you know, you just end up going, okay, well, if you give me good constructive feedback as to why this concept isn't ticking the box, perhaps I missed something in the value, or I weighted something too much towards one value and not the other. Sometimes colors can just completely throw off a design. If they give good constructive feedback at that point, if I'm doing my job right, I should be able to steer it into the right path for the next go round. And I kind of back myself to be able to do that. So that's why I back myself with one concept first, and I don't say, well, you only have 3 iterations to, you know, because I think that can sort of put a bit of pressure on a client. I mean, obviously they can't take advantage of it, but yeah, we've all got different processes, and that's just worked for me.
So Carol Ann asked, if you do multiple logos for a client, which I know maybe you used to do early on and now you don't do, which side note, I think you could teach people how to make pitches. And they choose the one that's not your favorite. Do you add that one the client picked to your portfolio, or do you add the one that you're most proud of?
I usually won't show a client anything I wouldn't put on my website or on social media or stuff like that. So I do put a lot of unused concepts out there. And then I might put the used concept as well. But yeah, like I said, I haven't presented 3 concepts for many years now.
Right.
So, but then there have been some times where I have gone in strong with one concept, and then we've drastically had to change the direction for the next concept, in which case I have showed both concepts online.
I realize how dark it is, so I'm going to turn my little lamp on. Oh, that's better. Now I'm not in the total dark. All right, so a couple more questions, and we're just going to have to do a part 2 if that's okay with you, because we
part 2's
got
great. We didn't even go through my presentation.
I know. So I want to ask a couple other questions. So one, and maybe we can do a part 2. We'll schedule it before the end of the year or something if we can work it out. I know. Sorry. All right. So I wanted to show them some of the other, because there really is a wide range of things that you do. I know Jeremy said he's a fan of Troy Sivan or Sivan, or I don't know how to say the guy's
Troy
name.
Sivan. Yeah.
Sivan.
He's an Australian musician that's, I think he's got another album coming out soon, but I'll let you go.
From this to this is so different. And then even this project, which I think is a beautiful project and very graphic. Some of the,
that is a perfect example of, you need to go through the presentation to appreciate what it is. If I had have just shown that logo mark on its own, 100% the client would have gone, what else you got? But when you go through the presentation, you get to understand what it is. And if you read through it, then it definitely makes sense.
Well, and this one is just beautiful. The pattern that you're using is just incredible.
Yeah. That was a really lucky find with that pattern too, because I won't go into it too much, but when it is gridded like that, all those lines actually flow through to the next circular module. Like
That's awesome. And I mean, but from this, which looks much tighter, it's much more graphic than hand done, that shows your flexibility. And then there's the Cavalier really has a ton of it has the shield kind of thing, which I'll have to scroll and try to find it, but I think that's one of your,
that was up higher,
one of your here it is. I was actually thinking about this one, because this one, this is like a hotel or something, right?
It's actually a pub in Adelaide. Well, it is. It is a hotel. It says hotel there, but it's also a pub. And they do a lot of craft beer, and it's a really lovely establishment.
And there's these other challenges, which you actually really enjoy doing, kind of having this more detailed kind of work. And this is a very flexible logo. And this was one of the promos that I did. I love how you have this, and then you did the E of L. I just think that was such a fun kind of.
So if you scroll down, you'll see what I mean by a logo suite. And to touch base on, I guess, different styles. I mean, so I've been specializing in corporate identity for a long time now. And before I discovered lettering, it's my job as someone that specializes in corporate identity to be flexible to any sort of brief that comes through. So, I can be working on a lawyer's logo or a financial logo, which, obviously I'm not going to do a lettering or calligraphy style logo for. It just seems to be that calligraphy and lettering has come to the forefront in the last few years. But before then, and still to this day, I love doing badges and emblems and crests and stuff like that. There's a real challenge in executing this style of logo. So this is how the client would have presented it. What you're going through, sorry, not how the client would have presented, how I would have presented it to the client. This is how they would have seen it for the first time. And so I go out on a limb, I really do, because there's a bit of work that goes into, putting it together like this. But over the years, I've got it down to a fine art. But yeah, so I love doing this sort of, I love detail stuff. I mean, I'd like to do more traditional emblems and vintage style crests and stuff like that, but they don't come along all that often.
Well, even the patterns, I mean, it seems like that's something that you enjoy, you are really good at, as taking this and then again showing them, hey, this could go. I mean, you can have sheets that were like this, or the covers of the duvet, or I mean, this.
And that's the thing. You don't have to go to. I mean, that's a very basic pattern,
right?
Because it's got a very complicated logo, so it only needed something very simple,
right?
And so you can balance those things. But patterns are a huge asset to a client, and depending, they can be used on websites, they can be used on brochures in different formats. They can be a blind, spot varnish or something like that goes over business cards. It just adds that extra dimension to it. So, it's something that I like to, add into my presentations, to give them more depth.
For sure. All right. Well, so I guess we're going to have to do your presentation the next time.
No problem.
But I'm going to get with you because I know you've got to get to work. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows how to follow you or get in touch with you. So again, if you're listening on iTunes or whatever, I'm going to spell everything out for you. And if you're on YouTube and not paying attention, then you can get it then as well. All right. So on the web, you can find Matt at verg.com.au. So verg.com.au. That is his website, and that's over in the chat as well. And then also Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm going to put all those. So Instagram is Matt Vergotis. I think now I'm like super scared of not saying it right.
Yeah, no, Vergotis is perfect.
Okay, and then Facebook is just Matt Verg, and then Twitter is Matt Vergotis. So again, and somebody posted earlier, and I super appreciate, maybe it was, I don't know who it was, I can't remember, but your logo pond. So I've got that for the show notes. You get bulk pins from Jet Pins, so I'm going to put a link there. The Canson bleed proof, I'll make sure we get that as well. And then the Posca markers, one of my favorites. I love that one as well. And then I'll make sure that I get your dribble in there too. So
fantastic.
I love having conversations with you. You're super.
Always a pleasure.
For me, it's really easy to always hang out and talk to you. And I'm sorry but he has a presentation, so we'll get that in.
Next time. We can do that next time. That's all good.
Absolutely.
No, it's really nice because it's nice to speak to other creatives as well. So things like this, because I work in an office with web developers, and they're a fantastic bunch of people. But to be able to speak to other people that, into lettering and corporate identity and stuff like that is it's always great.
It kind of fits an itch, like you're with your people, because they understand all these tiny little things that maybe you don't get when you're working with a web developer.
I'm with a Slack group of, and you've interviewed most of them. Shout out to all you guys. I won't go through all the names because I'll forget someone. I don't want to offend anyone, but like just being involved in that sort of, community like that is really, really cool. It's always great to speak to people that are sharing similar sort of problems, quoting problems. You want to get feedback. Colin Tini is my main man for feedback. If I've done something or if he's done something, we always, shoot a visual over and, we eyeball, and it's always awesome. So
it is really good to have people that can give you that real honest feedback and have your best interests. They want to see you succeed. And I think it is a tight group where you guys are really able to see growth as well, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so thank you, Matt. So next week is supposed to be a rapid recharge. I may see if Matt can come back, but he might not can come back, but we'll see. And
People might get sick of me.
no, I think a part 2 right after would be great. And then I don't
Okay.
have to prepare any more questions because I have these and you already have your presentation.
Yeah.
If you have time, maybe we can do it next
Yeah, I'm
Wednesday
happy.
for
More than happy
you.
to have a chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if that's okay, then we'll do that. If not, you can tell me and be like, I can't believe you put me on the spot.
No, it's absolutely fine. Anytime. I've enjoyed having a chat with you. It's always great having a chat. So no, thank you. And thank you everyone for that left questions. I didn't read them while they were coming in because I'm so bad at multitasking that if I had been answering your question and started reading, I would have drifted off and I would have been lost.
I tried to get the questions that anybody said or most of the comments too. So the one I didn't, Jeremy said those fine lines would be very popular in the black line community, tattoo community.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I'm so out of the loop. I'm such
so am I.
old granny, I guess, but I'll look it up, Jeremy. Just fine line tattoos. Oh, like my dragonfly. Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think this is what I love about Matt is that he's very flexible. And I think, a lot of times people be like, you need to focus. And I think you do focus. You focus on corporate identity and branding and things like that. But it's not, you haven't just pinpointed one style because one style will go out. It only it has a life and you have to keep growing. I think that's how we are as a creative. But before I let you go, you have to give me a surfing analogy. I promised people there would be. So we talked about just that grounding, how you get grounded with surfing, and then I'll let you go and then we'll continue it on next week. Can you tell them a little bit about that?
So what surfing means to me in my life? Is that what you mean? Well,
sure. And how it kind of grounds you when, because you have to be all in, I guess, Yeah.
I mean, look, I've got a young family and I've kind of whittled my lifestyle down to 3 things. And they're the 3 things that I love the most, that I hold closest to me. And that's my family, of course. And, I've got 2 young daughters and surfing and work. And so, sure, it's important to have other interests and stuff like that. I play the guitar a lot at the moment, learning the guitar, but with surfing, it balances me. My wife's just got home, so it's perfect timing. Surfing just balances me because I surf at incredibly early hours of the morning. And so I start off pretty much every day in the water and, being out and seeing the sun come up and all of that. It's just one of those things that starts your day off. Like every day kind of feels like a holiday when you've had that time in the ocean. And so it doesn't matter what the day throws at me. I kind of, it balances me. I mean, it's the same with other people with exercise, any sort of exercise. If you do it in the morning, it just kicks your day off, on the right foot. And, and then obviously, I enjoy what I do with work and then, so I balance those 3 things and family time and just try and be as good as I can be at those 3 things. And that sort of, I'm not working through the night, doing, burning the candle at both ends. I go through my busy periods, but I still have that balance. I still get my surf in. I don't, let everything get on top of me. I still sort of balance things out. So that's probably, if I did, then Dismo would have been done in a 10th of the time. That's why it took 3 years, because I still had a life.
Right. And I think that's really important because then your life doesn't go away, right? You're able to focus.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. I guess maybe I'll see you next week. And thank you guys. And we'll just do another Tuesday. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I will see you guys next week. Let me hit the off record.